I would like to welcome you to this recorded lecture, and the course is Basic Ecology, BOX 1204, which is an undergraduate course in semester 2. The topic we are going to cover today is the concept of biomes, biome as used in ecology. These are some of the introductory concepts that we need to know in order to understand the basic ecology course. So I'm going to share my screen and we go through this concept of biomes as used in ecology. Biomes is an ecological concept. There is no universal definition of what a biome is. There is no universally agreed definition for the term biome. But we generally take biomes to be great communities of the world. They are aggregates of plants and animal communities and communities of other groups of living organisms aggregated together, and they make up a large community, a great community of the world. Biomes are classified according to their specific characteristics. So we consider characteristics such as the climate, the vegetation, the soil, and wildlife to classify a biome. We cannot say that biomes are constant or they will be the same forever and ever. Biomes change constantly during their history, since we know that they can be damaged by, for instance, human activities. Human activities, for example, can lead to conversion of a forest into a plantation or an agricultural land. Human activities could lead to conversion of a wetland into some other form of land use. So biomes are never static. They keep on changing from one form to another due to human activities. In conservation biology and in ecological science, biomes should be preserved and conserved so that they continue giving their ecosystems goods and services. We can now distinguish between what we call a biome and an ecosystem. An ecosystem refers to a system of interactions between different living species, such as plants and animals, in a certain environment. And yet we've said that biomes are large communities of plants and animals in any part of the world. That's the main difference between a biome and ecosystem, is that an ecosystem is a part of a biome. An ecosystem is a part of a biome. Several ecosystems aggregate together to constitute or to form a biome. The biology definition of a biome is that it is a major ecological community. A biome is a major ecological community of organisms adapted to a particular climatic or environmental condition on a large geographical area in which they occur. I repeat that biomes are major ecological communities of organisms adapted to particular climatic conditions on a large geographical area in which they occur. And I've included here a map of the whole world showing the different continents and the biomes they are in. You can see these ecological communities of organisms adapted to particular climatical conditions on a large geographical area. So look at Africa, for example, here. Here in Africa, we can see a biome with this orange color, another biome with this light green color, and another biome and other biomes like those with blue colors. So like here in Southern Africa, you can see some biome, which is also present here in Northern Africa. The biome here in Central Africa up there, or we can call it North Central Africa, even the southwest, we can call it the northwest, and even in the northeast, up to somewhere there near East Africa. All of that in brownish is a biome, in brownish color, that is a biome. But there is also one here, which is in light green or orange color. And then after that, you go to that one in brown color. Now, the biome up there in North Africa is known as a desert, but it is also found in the Southern Africa here. That is a desert biome. Then when we come to the Eastern Africa here and North Central Africa, there is a biome which we call tropical grassland and subtropical grassland, savannas and shrubland. They are there. Then the green one here is a tropical moist broadleaf forest, that light green. Yet the bluish here is called flooded grassland. It is called a flooded grassland and flooded savanna. We have one here, another one there, and others scattered within the Southern Africa. They are called flooded grasslands. So you realize that biomes like mangroves are not present in Africa. Mangroves are not anywhere present in Africa. We also do not have the boreal forest in Africa, that one with the darker green, it is not there. The boreal forest. And the dominant biome in Africa is this tropical grassland, subtropical grassland, savannas, and shrublands. They are dominant. But also in Northern Africa, the dominant biome is a desert and xeric shrubland, but which is also found in the southwestern region of Africa. So this is the map of the world. I've only chosen to show you what is in Africa, but when you go to the west of this figure, to the left-hand side of this figure, you can see the biomes in Southern America and the biomes in Northern America, in North America. For example, we've got coniferous forests, tundra, in the southern, in South America and also in North America. But also in North America, we find a biome which is darker green, and it is called tropical broadleaf forest. You can see it exists here, tropical broadleaf forest, but it is also found in Eurasia, in Europe and Asia here. That darker green biome is known as a tropical and even subtropical dry broadleaf forest. Oh, okay. The darker green one is called boreal forest. But the lighter green is called template. It's called template broadleaf forest, and then mixed forest. This one is a template. Yet the other one, the darker one, is called the boreal forest. They occur in Europe and Asia, and also in North America. In North America. Then the orange one, which is template conifer forest, is also found in. It is also found in. Let us go back to our map. It is also found in South America, and also in North America. In a few parts of North America, we find that boreal forest. Okay, not boreal forest. We call it template conifer forest, and also Mediterranean forests and woodlands. Anyway, going back to the definition of a biome, already that map of the world has shown you that there are many biomes scattered in different parts of the world. In Africa, in South America, like Brazil and other countries, in North America, in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia, and also on the in the Antarctic, or those islands. So the biomes are many. Could have deserts, could have grasslands, we could have grasslands which could be tropical grasslands, so savanna, and temperate grassland. But also we can have forests which could be moist forests, dry broadleaf forests, then tropical evergreen forests, all of those, and the temperate forests, all of those are biomes. The boreal forests, all of those are biomes, and they are important to an ecologist. The woodlands are biomes, the shrublands are biomes, and also the scrubs. The mangrove are forests, mangrove are biomes. So biomes are diverse. They are diverse and are scattered in different continents of the world, So in this case, we can also look at a biome as a large area characterized by unique vegetation, soil, climate, and wildlife. And there are generally 6 biomes in the world. Four of these are land biomes. They occur on land. We can say they are terrestrial, such as forests, deserts, grasslands, and tundra. Those are called terrestrial biomes because they occur on land. We can also call them land biomes. The two are aquatic biomes, such as the marine water biomes and the freshwater biomes. We can further divide the biomes into what we call temperate rainforests, tropical rainforests, taiga, and savanna. Those that occur on land, the terrestrial biomes, could be divided into temperate rainforests, tropical rainforests, taiga or boreal forests, and then savanna, what we call the tropical grasslands. Forests are considered to be important homes for several biotic communities. The forests serve as a habitat and food source for various animals. As such, one may find various microhabitats within a forest. Forests serve the role of climate buffering or carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration. In this case, this is a global role of the forest. We are calling it carbon sequestration. That means they absorb carbon dioxide, which they utilize in the photosynthetic process, thereby reducing the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Therefore, when you destroy a forest, you are going to lead to an increase in the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And being a greenhouse gas, you will contribute to global warming and also to climate change. Marine and freshwater biomes represent the most important example of biomes, since water is the main constituent of all living organisms. Water is a biomolecule of life, and therefore the freshwater biomes and marine biomes are a very important constituent, a very important form of biome for life or for living organisms. A great number of living species live in marine and freshwater, and we call those ones aquatic organisms. Oceans are an example of marine biomes, and in one way or another, they influence the global climate. Oceans influence the global climate, just like the forests do. So the water component of the Earth, or the Earth's hydrosphere, contains many planktons, which we call phytoplanktons and zooplanktons, that produce, the phytoplanktons produce oxygen that supports a large population of aerobic organisms thriving in oceans, seas, and freshwater. So we have some ecosystems that are in marine ecosystems and in fresh ecosystems, but all depend on the gross primary productivity of the phytoplanktons, hence forming a great ecosystem on which all other aquatic ecosystems derive their energy or they derive their food source. The types of biomes, as we've already said, they are the terrestrial or land biomes and the aquatic biomes. But then the terrestrial have been divided into land biomes have been divided into these: the grasslands, the forests, and the deserts, plus what we call tundra. We are going to cover these again in detail. We are going to cover them in detail because some of these biomes are further divided into more specific categories. So you can have fresh water biomes and marine biomes. Then we can have savannas, tropical rainforest, temperate and taiga or boreal forest for the what? For the land. For the land. I repeated some of those just for clarification. And when you look at these photos, like this one, that one is an example of a photograph for an aquatic biome. For an aquatic biome. The difference between freshwater biomes and marine biomes is that freshwater, they are actually the rivers, the lakes, the ponds, whose salt content is less than 1%. Then marine biomes are mainly salty. They are saline. Salt concentration is high, and the marine biomes cover close to 3/4 of the Earth's surface. You hear the Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean Ocean, the Pacific, the Mediterranean Sea, the Pacific Ocean. All of those are large bodies of marine biomes, and they harbor a lot of organisms and contribute greatly to the global climate. So I can show you some other photographs. This is also a photograph of a biome that has a lot of aquatic organisms. You can even see the ducks swimming in that biome, but they are surrounded by land that bears certain vegetation, but also we've got certain organisms which we've got the phytoplanktons and zooplanktons within the water body that contribute to the life they are in. We can also see this biome, that one is also an aquatic biome, the way you can see it. Another aquatic biome, in this case, it has been named as a freshwater biome, is this one we can see, composed of fresh water. Another one, which is freshwater biome, is this one. And it looks like a kind of wetland, But we have another one here, that one is also an aquatic biome. So aquatic is anything living or growing in water. Anything living or happening in water. Anything living connected with water is said to be aquatic. So all the life and living communities, together with the abiotic factors, constitute the aquatic biomes, and these make up a large part of the Earth, around 70% of the Earth. And we are talking of abiotic factors within water bodies that are mainly climatic, and these include temperature. We call them elements of climate: temperature, rainfall. Others are salt, the mineral, nutrients, and suspended particles. But light is the most important abiotic factor among all the factors that influence living organisms in aquatic biomes. So never forget that biomes could be marine biomes or freshwater biomes, and it is the salt content which is used to classify these biomes. It is the salt content that we use to classify the biomes. So if we are talking about the biome of oceans and seas, then we use the term marine. Oceans and seas are the largest ecosystems. They are the largest ecosystems, larger than even the forests, the grasslands, the deserts, all combined together. These oceans, the marine biomes, are larger. They are very large in size. And we also give an example of these marine biomes. One of them is that one, and another one is down there. But it is very important to note that species diversity is at its highest within the marine biomes. The species diversity is at its highest, meaning there are thousands or even millions of species that are found in the marine biomes compared to the freshwater biomes. And of course, we will see the reason why that one is so. Freshwater biomes could be divided into lotic and lentic ecosystems. Lotic meaning that water is running. So if a freshwater is composed of running water, then we call that a lotic ecosystem. But if a freshwater ecosystem is composed of stagnant water, then we call that lentic ecosystem. So an example of lotic ecosystems are the rivers and streams that are always flowing. They have running water. And then an example of lentic ecosystems are the lakes and ponds whose water is stagnant. It's not flowing. The plants in lakes and ponds, which are the lentic ecosystems, lentic freshwater ecosystems, the plants therein are called phytoplanktons, while the animals are called zooplanktons. Wetlands are an ecosystem where the soil is mostly submerged in water. So when we talk of a wetland, we are talking of a kind of biome, a kind of ecosystem where soil is mostly submerged in water. And wetlands include marshes, salty marshes, swamps, bogs, and mud flats. Those are the different names. You can search them out, maybe for photographs or images to see what a salty marsh is, what a bog is, what a marsh is, and what a swamp is. But in our localities, what is most common, the commonest wetland are the swamps. They are the swamps. So we've said that aquatic biomes are large water bodies. They are large water bodies, and what distinguishes between freshwater and marine biomes is the salt concentration or salt content. If it is less than 1% salt content, then that is called freshwater biome. If it is very salty water, then the biome is known as marine biome. Aquatic biomes are rich and diverse in species, especially those species that adapted to fresh water and those adapted to salty or saline conditions. Saline or salty conditions. I'm trying to remove these questions because they will come later on in our revision. In our revision, the questions will come later on. The second important biome, which we study in ecology, is known as a grassland. Is known as a grassland. And we define grasslands as open regions that are dominated by grass and having a warm, dry climate. Grasslands are open regions dominated by grass and have a warm, dry climate. There are two main types of grasslands. The first type is called tropical grassland or savanna, and the second type is called temperate grassland. Whatever the type of grassland it could be or it may be, grasslands, as we've said, have grass as the dominant vegetation. The dominant vegetation in grasslands is grass. So we may find the composition of trees and maybe the woodland, the shrubs, the herbs is very low. What is of dominance? The dominant vegetation is grass. The dominant vegetation is grass. Grasslands are mainly found in places where the rainfall is not regular. In areas where rainfall is not regular. And grasslands have been shown to support the growth of forests. So a grassland could undergo a succession into a forest, but not into a desert, not into a desert. So most of these biomes are actually successional stages. They are successional stages. For example, a grassland is a successional stage that occurs between a forest and a desert. Whereas a forest could easily change into a desert, the grassland changes into a forest. Grasslands account for between 20 to 40% of the world's land area. They are generally open and fairly flat. And we find grasslands almost in all continents. On every continent, in Europe, grasslands are there. In Africa, grasslands are there. In South America, and even in North America. In Asia, grasslands are there, except on the Antarctica, which makes them vulnerable to pressure from human populations. So the human population pressure is the largest threat to grasslands. The others are mainly threats from wildlife, maybe overstocking of wildlife or overstocking of livestock. could also be another threat to natural grasslands. So we can say the threats to natural grasslands include overgrazing, but there is also species invasion. Invasive species may also threaten grasslands. Farming is another threat to natural grasslands. Illegal hunting is another threat, and climate change is another threat to grasslands. At the same time, grasslands could help mitigate climate change. They could help to mitigate climate change because we know that many grasslands, like those in California, and the rangelands, those expansive pieces of grasslands that are used for livestock grazing and even wildlife grazing, and most of which are actually the grassland national parks or conservation area that support large assemblages or communities of wildlife. All of those are known to help in the mitigation of climate change as they store carbon. They store much carbon, and in the process of storing more carbon than forests, they are less, they contribute to climate, to mitigating climate change and global warming. Rangelands and grasslands are less susceptible to wildfires and drought compared to forests, which is why we say they mitigate climate change. It's only a small percentage, less than 10% of the world's grasslands that is found in protected areas. As we've already said, tropical grasslands and temperate grasslands are the two main types of grasslands known to exist. Tropical grasslands, so savannas, are mainly hot, and they occur in sub-Saharan Africa and even in northern Australia, in South sub-Saharan Africa and in northern Australia. Going back to our map of the world, you can see that this tropical and subtropical grasslands, the savannas and shrublands, make up a large part of this part of Africa, the north, the eastern, and even large parts of southern Africa. But when you go also in Southern America, here you find the tropical and subtropical grasslands, savannas, and shrubland occurring there, and in some other parts of Africa, of South America. But in North America, we don't see these grasslands quite often. So I have said that the grasslands are actually very abundant in South America and also in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa, and also in many parts of South America. There is a change in name. When we go to the Midwest South, the Midwest part of the United States or North America. The grasslands we find, they are called prairies. But when we go to South America, the grassland the name of the grassland changes and they're called the pampas. But if we go to Europe and Asia, in the central Eurasian grasslands, the name of the grassland is called steppes. But in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa particularly, the grasslands are called savannas. So that is important. That is important. So the prairies of the United States, the pampas of South America, the steppes of Eurasia, of Europe and Asia, and the savannas of sub-Saharan Africa are all actually forms. They are a biome which is called grassland. They are a biome which is called grassland. Of course, I went on repeating some of these things for repetition, but it is important to note that rainfall varies across grasslands from season to season and from one year to another. And the rainfall ranges between 25 to 101 centimeters. So that means that the rainfall received in grassland areas is actually low compared to the other biomes, like rainfall received in forest biomes. The temperatures go below freezing in temperate grassland to above 32 degrees Celsius. Yeah, to above 32 degrees Celsius. The height of vegetation on grasslands varies with the amount of rainfall. Some grasses might be under 0.3 meters tall, while other grasses can go up to 2.1 meters tall. The roots of these grasses can extend to between 0.9 to 1.8 meters deep into the soil. And if you go to some books, like books which show the grasses of Africa, the grasses which we find in the savannas, you'll find that most of these have very deep roots, because the amount of rainfall received in these areas is actually very low. So the root system has to extend deep into soil in order to search for water, used in the plant life. Looking at the grassland plants and animals, grassland or any grassland supports a variety of species. For example, on the African savanna, we find a variety of animals. We find animal communities like the common zebra. We find there the giraffes. We find the wild beast and the gazelle, the Thompson gazelle. So if you go to the Serengeti National Park or Serengeti Conservation Area, you'll find all these animals there. Even the impalas. Go to Lake Mburo National Park, you'll find the impalas there. Go to Chidepo Valley National Park, you'll find the giraffes, the impalas, all there. But we can also find in grasslands large animals. Apart from these medium-sized animals, like giraffes and zebras, we also find large animals such as the buffaloes and the elephants, the African elephant, Loxodonta africana. It occurs there in those wetlands, the tropical, not wetlands, but tropical grassland. On temperate grasslands, you find there a number of animals, like a number of wild animals, like the prairie dogs, the coyote, the badgers, the swift foxes, and a variety of birds. Birds actually occur in savannas and also in temperate grasslands in large numbers. And you will find many of these species being grazers. Many of the wild animals are grazers within grasslands, although some are browsers. Grazers, they feed at a low level and they eat grass. But we also have the browsers, which feed on the scattered trees within the grasslands, like those of savannas. You find browsers, like giraffes are browsers, actually. But we also have mixed feeders, which can both browse and also graze in times of abundant grass. For example, in times of rainy season, when the rate of growth of grass is high, some of these grassland animals, actually majority of them, including even the zebras, the impalas, you'll find them grazing because the grass is abundant and more nutritious. The grass is abundant and more nutritious, very easy to find, very watery, and with a lot of nutrients. So majority of the grassland wildlife will graze, while in the dry season, as the grass or forage becomes less abundant and more fibrous. Most of the grass in the dry season becomes very dry, very fibrous, and scarce. So you'll find majority of the wildlife turning to browsing. Browse since grass is in short supply in the dry season. So the feeding dynamics of the wildlife depends on the season. It depends on the season and also on the availability of grass for grazing by the wildlife. And you will also find livestock behaving in a similar way. Livestock behaves in a similar way. That is to say, in times of abundant grass, most of the livestock will graze. You'll find the cattle grazing, even the goats grazing in the wet season, rainy season. But in the dry season, you'll find the goats browsing, the sheep browsing instead of grazing, because the food preference depends on the availability of food. So you can see here that in the tropical savannas, we have species like Themeda triandra, what we call the red oat grass, and Chloris guyana, which we call the Rhodes grass, which are grazed by the animals in the rainy season. And in the temperate areas, in the temperate grasslands, you'll find Nacera pluchira, which we call the needle grass, and what we call Galeta, being a major form of food in the grasslands. The plants on grasslands have adapted to drought. They are adapted to drought. I said the rainfall received is less in grasslands. So the plants there are drought tolerant. They are drought tolerant. But they are also fire tolerant because of regular burning that takes place in grasslands. So the plants in grasslands are fire tolerant. They are also tolerant to heavy grazing by wildlife. Fire, both natural and human caused, is an important factor which shapes the structure of grasslands. In the United States, Native Americans set fires to help maintain grasslands for the game species, for the wild animals, or the game animals like the bison. Fire also prevents the fire-intolerant trees and shrubs from taking over in a grassland ecosystem, while increasing the diversity of wildflowers that supports pollinators. So fire is a very important constituent of grassland ecosystems. And for emphasis, I've said that savannas are the tropical grasslands which we find in many parts of Africa, in many parts of Australia, India, and South America. And they are composed of grass as the dominant vegetation with a few scattered trees. All of these supporting animals and plants that are adapted to those conditions. So we can say that looking at the plant life, which we see here in that photograph, you will find Loxodonta africana, the African elephant, the Asian elephant, the buffaloes, the impalas, the common zebra, Icus bucheli or Icus quagga, and similar grazing communities, browsing communities, herbivorous communities being adapted there. And here I show you an example of a photograph in which the African elephant, Loxodonta africana, is actually adapted. And you can see the tall grasses being conducive for elephant grazing. The trees are scattered and the grass is the dominant vegetation. But like I've told you, seasonality is important because during the dry season, this grass is less abundant, and therefore the forage or the food for these grazers is scarce as the grass becomes more fibrous and less fleshy. And that means most grazing communities will turn to browsing on the leaves or foliage in those scattered trees. And the life will continue of these animals. So seasonality is important. You can see an assemblage of the common zebra, Icus quagga, and Icus bucheli within a savanna ecosystem, a tropical grassland during the dry season. One adaptation of this species on which I made a study in Lake Mburo National Park was the fact that in the dry season, they depend much on on the less fleshy and less nutritious parts of plants. And they have got a gut, a digestive system that can process foods with the low nutrients. The zebras, the common zebra, has got digestive physiology and digestive anatomy capable of quick processing of the less nutritious foods in times of dry season, for which reason they find it very easy to switch from the more nutritious, more fleshy, abundant grass of the wet season to this less nutritious grass in the dry season. So since the nutrients obtained from this less nutritious forage are few, what the zebra does, it can feed like for 14 hours in a day. It can feed all the way from early in the morning up to late in the evening to about 9 or 10 p.m. So if you are doing an ecological study on these zebras, you'll find you may retire back home as you leave them in the field still foraging in the dry season due to the less nutritious forage on which they feed during the dry season. And as I've said, the digestive physiology of these animals enables them to depend on less nutritious foods. They have got a quick throughput rate. What we call a quick throughput rate of the animal is the rate at which the food ingested is processed in the gut to obtain nutrients which are absorbed into the bloodstream, and the rest being ingested as undigested food remains or fecal material. A dry and another tropical grassland or savanna is this one, where this species of animals, which we call Epiceros merampas. Epiceros merampas is what you are observing here. And these ones are also adapted to feeding on less nutritious foods. But you see an associated bird, they are associated bird communities that depend on the ectoparasites found on these animals. And that kind of symbiotic relationship where two organisms belonging to different species are actually coexisting in the same habitat, but without competition, is known as commensalism. We call it commensalism. The host is neither harmed nor does it suffer any loss, and it does not benefit. But the commensal, which is the white egret, which you can see there in the photograph, actually benefits from the association, from the symbiotic association. And as we shall see later, symbiotic associations could be parasitism, they could be mutualism or commensalism, like this one. And we also have what we call amensalism. So I included many photographs to show you that different parts of the world have got different biomes. They have got different biomes which have got particular temperatures, climatic conditions, rainfall regimes, and habitats, plus their ecological interactions, which result in a specific in specific communities of organisms, of wildlife that that adapted to that habitat or to that biome. The wild beasts here that you see could be found in Serengeti National Park or Serengeti Conservation Area, and we know them as migratory mammals that keep on traversing the tropical grassland, the savanna ecosystem, not only in the dry season, but also in the wet season. In fact, here in sub-Saharan Africa, the Serengeti National Park is the largest tropical grassland that hosts large assemblages, large communities of mammals in a single area. So I would like to cross and go to another type of biome. We finished the tropical grassland, but when you are moving, like in Lake Mburo National Park, Lake Mburo Conservation Area, you will find this kind of assemblage of plant communities with termite mounds, and you'll find a specific group of animals or wildlife whose adaptation is actually influenced by these termite mounds, and also areas where they can do solid leaking. They go to such areas where they can do solid leaking in order to obtain some nutrients. But you also find some abandoned termite mounds forming habitats for squirrels and other small ground mammals therein. The termites are there. So in addition to the large mammals, we find other small organisms in these ecosystems, which we call the tropical grasslands. The drier regions of East Africa are occupied by communities of plants known as acacias. And the acacia are of various types, various species. We have Acacia hawkeye, Acacia gerardii, Acacia seberiana, Acacia, very many species of acacia. So when you go to like Queen Elizabeth National Park, you'll find many acacia species which can be browsed by the giraffes and other browsers. But they also provide shade for these animals, shade from the hot parts, during the hot parts of the day. They take refuge, the animals take refuge there. So among the plant communities, it is important for you to note that in Uganda and most East African areas, acacia is the dominant tree scattered in the tropical grasslands or in the savannas. I'll not dwell a lot on that. I've already talked about the fauna. Maybe we can also repeat this for emphasis, that savannas provide habitats for a wide array of animals, mainly the grazers, the browsers, but also find there the pollinators, and agents of seed dispersal, and those that are involved in nutrient cycling, those which are involved in nutrient cycling. Majority of these are large grazing mammals, such as the native fauna of Africa. Name all of them: the buffaloes, the African elephant, the impalas, the warthogs. You'll find there the waterbacks, the bushback. All of these are dominant grazing mammalian communities in African savannas. But there are also those which are invisible, those which are less spectacular, such as the invertebrates like grasshoppers and caterpillars. Since we said that grasshoppers are, okay, they depend on grass, and grass is the dominant vegetation within the tropical grasslands, then many species of grasshoppers will exist there. And these consume understory foliage. You also find there termites, which actually consume dead plant matter, including wood, the wood from the scattered trees that we find there. As I've already pointed out, hippopotamuses, antelopes, zebras, carnivores, scavengers, giraffes, elephants are the dominant communities which we find there in the African grasslands. Large mammals also, which are not regular here in Africa, occur in Australia, in savannas of Australia. And these are the kangaroos, the so-called poached mammals, the poached mammals, the placental mammals, the kangaroos, the wallabies. All these exist in Australian savannas because they are mainly grass eaters or grazers. Of course, it is important also to note that a number of these animals, such as the horses, like the camels, the donkeys, and the water buffaloes, have been domesticated by humans, and we no longer call them. I mean, part of their population is domesticated, not wild, because they can be tamed by man. So the dominant activity, as far as wildlife is concerned in savannas, is grazing. It is not browsing, but grazing. As I indicated, browsing on woody plants is mainly in the dry season when grass is scarce and even more fibrous. It is important also to note that fire is an important ingredient in savanna ecosystems. Savanna fires could be started by lightning and also by humans. Those of humans could be accidental, or they could be prescribed burning. Whether accidental or prescribed burning or natural fires, fire is a regulator of the structure of grassland communities, because it is fire which will inhibit the growth or the proliferation of fire-intolerant trees and shrubs, thereby encouraging the fire-tolerant grasses to thrive. And we cannot escape a discussion of the fauna and flora of tropical grasslands without talking about fire as being an important factor that regulates the structure of savanna ecosystems. Fires could be traditionally lit to keep an open grassland, to reveal and kill small edible animals like lizards, turtles, and rodents, to create areas that will later on develop fresh green grass. For example, the herdsmen, the cattle keepers use this technique to open up an area in order to encourage fresh, nutritious grass, such as Symbopogoni nadus, Blacharia decambens, Hyperenia filipendra, Cynodon dactyron, Digitalia abyssinica, and the other edible grass species to germinate, to emerge. So they use fire as a management tool to control the food availability for their livestock and also the wild grazers. The wild grazers. Okay. We can also see that there are those plants which can survive fire because they have buds, bud buds, that are located underground or beneath the thick bark. And that kind of arrangement where buds are located underground is a protection against fires. They regenerate quickly, and the species thrives. Other plants can reproduce effectively from seeds shed onto a bad ground. So those are called fire persistent species, fire tolerant species. So those plant species actually benefit when you burn a grassland. They will thrive, they'll become more abundant than the fire sensitive plants. An example is eucalyptus trees that dominates most areas in savannas of Australia, and the pine. These are known to be highly drought resistant, although we know that they are also sensitive to fires. Going back to biological, okay, before we tackle the biological diversity, we should also remember that tropical grasslands or savannas could be degraded, and they can also develop into deserts. For example, with increased trampling by livestock, grazing livestock, increased trampling by the grazing wildlife, we will have a degradation, a slow conversion from a grassland into a desert. So biologists should protect these biomes so that they do not degenerate into deserts, and so that they may continue supporting the large communities of wildlife. Okay, other parts of the savannas which talk about primary productivity, net primary productivity, and gross primary productivity will be shared in the due course on your emails. But in this video, I was interested in only taking you through these biomes, like we've discussed in detail, tropical grasslands and the animal communities which they support, Here we also have temperate grasslands. But as I indicated in the other map, these may not, we may not find them in most parts of Africa, apart from South Africa. They mainly occur elsewhere outside the African continent, in North America, in Uruguay, Russia, Argentina, and other parts. These do not have any trees or shrubs, and they receive less rainfall, precipitation than the savannas. And as I indicated, we use names like steppes, prairies, to refer to these temperate grasslands. And I've included here photographs, which you can see for the temperate grasslands, and also the animal communities that exist there. But it is important for us to note that the trees and shrubs are not found in the temperate grasslands. You will realize from the photograph which I've shown you here, and which I want to expand for your benefit, that some animal communities actually occur in temperate grasslands, but we do not see any shrub or any tree in these biomes or ecosystems. So the vegetation, they are mainly the perennial grasses and the perennial forbs. And when we say perennial, we mean that these grasses and forbs in temperate grasslands can survive for over 1 year, year in, year out. They are there, mainly from the families of Asteraceae and Leguminosae, the sunflowers and the pea families. Those ones are the dominant growth forms within temperate grasslands. And it is also important to note that temperate grasslands are also well adapted to drought, fire, and cold. The fauna in these temperate grasslands are also mixed. Some of them are herbivores, others are carnivorous animals. And in the North American temperate grasslands, we find that species, which we call bison, being dominant, and pronghorn as the endemic species in those ecosystems. The rodent herbivores, such as ground squirrels, the prairie dogs, are also present there. And carnivores like coyote, badger, and the black-footed ferret, which belong to the weasel family, are actually other animals in those temperate grasslands. When you go to Russia, the fauna which is dominant there is known as the wild horse and the saiga antelopes. But we also find there endemic species such as the mole rat and other species that are conspicuous, because they build moons. They build moons like termites. We're about to finish. The other important biome are the forests, which are the opposite of grassland, because the forest has got trees as the dominant vegetation, yet a grassland has got grass as the dominant vegetation. So in forests, we find grass species being scattered and even rare, but the trees are dominant, forming kind of canopy which is inhabitable by a variety of forest birds, a variety of forest mammals, butterflies, and other insect species dominant there. And we are saying that we can have temperate forests, tropical forests, and boreal forests. But of all of these, the temperate forests have the richest biodiversity. They are more rich in biological diversity. This is an example of the tropical deciduous forest, which I show you in the photograph. Another example of the tropical deciduous forest is this one that I'm expanding for you. And you will review these photographs, but in the interest of time, I want simply to point out the major features. In a tropical deciduous forest, the vegetation is known to be made up of broad-leaved trees, for which reason you can also call them broad-leaved forests. And they are characterized by shading of their leaves during the dry season or before the dry season sets in, as an adaptation of minimizing the rate of evapotranspiration or the transpiration rate. So these forests are also described as deciduous forests. They are adapted to minimizing water loss by shedding off their leaves prior to the setting in of dry seasons. You see, this is a deciduous forest. And you find the green composition of the leaves is very low in these deciduous forests. For which reason, we are going to say that the biological diversity in them is actually also very low. Switching to the tropical evergreen forests, you can see this species of a manga bird, and it is actually a primate, which is it is attached on a branch of a tree, a large tree in a tropical evergreen forest. But you will find large assemblies of plant communities, mainly trees, that botanists and nature conservationists are interested in these tropical rainforests. So I show you here that tropical rainforests are actually a home of diverse flora and fauna, plant and animal communities. You can see a gorilla there, which is endemic to these biomes. But you also find a chimp, Pon troglodytes. You'll find the monkeys, the bavette monkeys, the red-tailed monkeys, the blue monkeys, the black and white Colobus guereza, the white and black Colobus monkeys. The red Colobus monkeys are all endemic in these biomes. But you'll find a variety of bird species, which we call the forest birds, some of which are understory birds. Others could be found on the forest floor, while others fly up in the canopy and could be trapped by complicated means. But these understory birds could be easily trapped by the technique, an ecological technique known as mist netting. As the low-flying bird is flying from one part of the forest to another, it will be caught up by the mist net, and the ecologist can get it out of the net, and you take measurements of its body, which is important for ecological research. Some characteristics of tropical evergreen forests, you will review them here in this video, but what I want you to remember is that tropical rainforests that are either dry or moist, or what we call evergreen, they are the biomes with the largest assemblies of biological diversity. And I give here, I've posed a question. Why do tropical rainforests, why are tropical rainforests rich in biological diversity? That is a question whose answers you'll get by reading here, that the climate of the tropical rainforests is characterized by a lot of sunlight, and we are aware that for photosynthesis to take place, sunlight is the necessary condition. Therefore, the rate of photosynthesis, the rate at which carbon dioxide is converted into carbohydrates in tropical rainforests is very high, and this attracts many animals that need to feed on that food. So the canopy structure of the rainforest provides abundance of places for plants to grow and for animals to inhabit. The canopy offers sources of food, it offers shelter and hiding places, and helps in the interaction between different species. So you'll find, for example, insects and birds which feed from the top of the canopy, but they don't feed maybe around the stem. You also find those which feed on the ground, and that will contribute to rich biodiversity because of the variety of food, shelter, and hiding places from the predators of animals. It is important to note that many species in the rainforest, especially insects and fungi, have not yet been discovered by scientists. So every year, scientists discover new species of mammals, new species of birds, new species of frogs, and new species of reptiles in tropical rainforests. So it is the tropical rainforests that have got high biodiversity. You will search for more reasons why the biological diversity, the species richness in tropical rainforests is high. When we go to areas with high altitudes, we find there what we call temperate forests. And these have 4 seasons. These have 4 seasons. In these biomes, you find winter, find there summer, find there autumn, and other seasons. So these are known as temperate rainforests. So that is a temperate rainforest. This one is also a temperate rainforest, and you see they have animals that adapted there. And the temperate forest ecology, because these temperate rainforests are not, the temperate forests are not very common in Africa, but they occur elsewhere in other parts or in other continents. Deciduous forests, these ones we've already tackled. Then we have boreal forests, also found at even higher altitudes. And they have the coldest and driest climate, where precipitation occurs primarily in the form of snow. And you'll find particular communities of animals that adapted to those very cold and very dry environments. You'll find particular communities of plants that adapted to those very cold and very dry habitats. But it is important to note that just like any other forest, boreal forests also help in mitigation of climate change by absorbing a greenhouse gas known as carbon dioxide, which is the main contributor to global warming and to climate change. The plant communities in these forests remove that carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and help to keep the entire planet healthy. Now, one problem with boreal forests is that they are highly threatened. About 18.7 million acres of forest is lost every year to deforestation and forest degradation. That is why we have what we call, you've ever heard what we call RED, R-E-D-D, and RED plus. That is, we have what we call reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. That is, by the way, a program or a kind of project which is very important for you to note. It is called RED, Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation. The program RED, together with other programs like the World Wildlife Fund, is mobilizing communities around the world to find permanent solutions for conservation of forests. They also encourage companies to use wood products from forests that are managed responsibly in accordance with the Forest Stewardship Council standards. The World Wildlife Fund is also working with governments to stop illegal logging in forests. The WWF is also working towards pooling resources with other groups to protect huge sections of forests in the longer term, and a lot other interventions to protect the forests. So here, these are forests which we call boreal forests. Moving on from boreal forests, we go to another biome, which is called deserts. Deserts are dry areas where rainfall is less than 50 centimeters per year. And deserts cover about 20% of the Earth's surface. They can either be cold or hot, although most of them are found in subtropical conditions. Because deserts have extreme environmental conditions, we do not find much plants and animals. We don't find much biodiversity in deserts as compared to other biomes. Any vegetation and wildlife living in a desert must have special adaptations for surviving in a dry environment. For example, you will find that plants that are adapted to desert conditions or dry conditions have what we call xeromorphic features. Xeromorphic features, and that group of plants is known as xerophytes. Xerophytes. So you read on the adaptations of plants and animals to living in dry conditions, water scarce conditions. So this is very important. Read about the adaptations of plants and animals to living in dry conditions, and you will use biological science, the textbook of biological science by NPO Green and others, to find out how these animals are adapted to living in dry conditions. How these xerophytes, like the xerophytes I show in that image, how are they adapted to live in dry conditions? When we expand this image, you realize that a large part is actually naked land, and a few plants exist on that desert. A few plants exist on that desert. Also, if we expand, you'll find there are these animals like the camelos that adapted to the desert conditions. Those are camels, but they have got particular adaptations, which I want you to go and read about. Read about the adaptations of plants and animals to living in dry conditions. I think we've covered most of the biomes of the world, and then the plants and animals that are adapted to conditions in those specific biomes. To an ecologist like you, your interest should be in exploring the biological diversity of the biome and the adaptation to ecological conditions, adaptations by plants and animals to surviving in those ecological conditions characteristic of a particular biome, like this second last biome, which I've told you, the desert, is made up of particular plants, which we call xerophytes, that have got xeromorphic features that you should read about. And those enable the plants to survive there. Then when you come to the animals, like these camels, which you see in the photo, how are they adapted to live in conditions of water scarcity? That is very important for you to read and write about. Finally, the tundra has extremely inhospitable conditions. The environmental conditions there are very, they're not hospitable to plant and animal life, because it has been found out that very low temperatures to as low as negative 34 degrees Celsius are found in these biomes. And this is not fit for human, animal, and plant life. And the amount of precipitation, amount of rainfall received is very low, to as low as 15 centimeters per year. And the quality of soil, the soil nutrients, is very low, very poor. And these are divided into Arctic and Alpine. So when we talk of Arctic, you should think of frozen conditions, very cold conditions. And when you talk about alpine, think about mountain life, mountainous life. Tundra does not have much biodiversity and vegetation. The vegetation therein is very simple. So you'll find simple shrubs, simple grasses, simple plants like mosses and lichens, which are actually always found in the initial stages of ecological succession in other biomes. The lichens, the grasses, shrubs are all simple vegetation. In tundra, it's because part of the soil surface is frozen. It is frozen, and that is the Arctic tundra, which is found north of the boreal forests. The alpine tundra on mountains that where the altitude is too high for trees to survive is also the second type. And then wildlife inhabiting the tundra must also be highly adapted to those extreme conditions if it is to survive there. And in my photographs, I show you the tundra as another biome with a few plants and animal communities, just as shown by my photographs. So the tundra biome is there, and I said they are the coldest and also driest of all biomes we know. They are characterized by extremely cold climate, low biological diversity, simple vegetation structure, short seasons of growth and reproduction, energy and nutrients in the form of dead organic matter, and they also have large population oscillations. So we will stop our discussions with tundra, Antarctic tundra, and alpine tundra. Antarctic is characterized by frozen conditions, and yet alpine high altitude. Therefore, there are a few insects, birds, and mammals that adapted to alpine tundra conditions, and very few plants which you'll find in the alpine tundra conditions. When it comes to Arctic tundra conditions, you find there simple vegetation, simple plants, simple animals. I have decided to share this video with you to enable you review it and get acquainted with the biomes of the world, the savannas, the forests, the deserts, the tundra, and boreal forests or taiga. Thank you very much. I call upon you to review this video over and over again. You don't even need to read, just get a pen and review the video. Note down a few features, and you will be able to write about any biome. But what is important as an ecologist is look at the plant life and the animal life in these biomes, especially the adaptations to the ecological conditions, both the biotic conditions as a result of the interactions between living organisms themselves, and also the abiotic conditions as a result of the interactions of organisms, that is the plants and animals, with the non-living or physical environment, like sunlight, temperature, salinity, background, and other climatic conditions which affect plant life and animal life. I'm going to put this video on YouTube so that you'll always be able to review it over and over again. I wish you a good day. Thank you very much.